Hello, this is going to be lesson number 8, grammar, modals, and related expressions, and the context will be renting an apartment. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to lesson number 1, which it says modals and related expressions, an overview. So basically an overview of what we're going to talk about on this chapter. Okay, a modal adds meaning to the verb that follows it. For example, here are a list of modals: can, could, should, will, would, may, might, and must. Okay, modals are different from other verbs in several ways. The base form of a verb follows a modal. You must pay your rent. You should clean his apartment now. No, modals never have an s, ed, or ing ending. He can rent an apartment. You cannot say he can rent an apartment. So you don't conjugate the modal verb. Okay, there's usually a verb that follows the modal, and so that's what the modal is doing, is adding meaning to the verb. So it's adding meaning to this verb rent, is adding meaning to this verb clean, this is adding meaning to the verb pay. Okay, all right. So if you notice here are other examples of what you should not do. Use to or ing. Okay, all right, so let me repeat again. You must pay your rent. You should clean his apartment now. He can rent an apartment. All right, related expressions: have to, be able to, be supposed to, be permitted, allowed to. He must sign in the lease. He has to sign the lease. So some verbs are like modals in the meaning. So these are related expressions that has the same meaning as must. He must sign the lease. He has to sign the lease. Has the same meaning. This is a modal. This is a different expression, way to say it. He can pay the rent. He is able to pay the rent. I must pay my rent by the 1st of the month. I'm supposed to pay the rent by the 1st of the month. You can't change the locks in your apartment. You're not permitted to change the locks in your apartment. You're not allowed to change the locks in your apartment. Sorry. Sorry, here you couldn't see it, so let me repeat it. You can't change the locks in your apartment. You're not permitted to change the locks in your apartment. You're not allowed to change the locks in your apartment. Okay? Alright, very good. So let's go on to so this is what we're going to be talking about in this chapter. So here, an apartment lease. Do you live in an apartment? Do you have a lease? Do you understand the lease when you sign it? What kinds of things are not allowed in your apartment? Okay, lease is like a contract. So if you're leasing your apartment or renting your apartment, okay. So here we're going to read the text. Okay. When people rent an apartment, they often have to sign a lease. A lease is an agreement between the owner, landlord, and the renter, tenant. A lease states the period of time for the rental, the amount of the rent, and the rules the renter must follow. Some leases contain the following rules: renters must not have a water bed. Renters must not have a pet. Renters must not change the locks without the owner's permission. Renters must pay a security deposit. Many owners ask the renters to pay a security deposit in case there are damages. When the renters move out, the owners are supposed to return the deposit plus interest if the apartment is in good condition. If there is damage, the owners can use part of all or all the money to repair the damage. However, they may not keep the renter's money for normal wear and tear, the normal use of the apartment. Renters do not have to agree to all the terms of the lease. They can ask for changes before they sign. A pet owner, for example, can ask for permission to have a pet by offering to pay a higher security deposit. There are laws that protect renters. For example, owners must provide heat during the winter months. in most cities they must put a smoke detector. Let me move this up. A smoke detector in each apartment and in the halls. In addition, owners can't refuse to rent to a person because of sex, race, religion, nationality, or disability. When the lease is up for renewal, owners can offer the renters a new lease, or they can ask the renters to leave. The owners are supposed to notify the renters usually at least 30 days in advance if they want the renters to leave. Alright, let's go back, and I'm going to discuss each paragraph, maybe share some things that I think you might have a question on. Okay, so when people rent an apartment, they often have to sign a lease. A lease is an agreement between the owner, the landlord, and the renter, the tenant. So the person that is renting is called the tenant, and so the one that's paying the money, and the person that rents the apartment, so that means that person owns the apartment and is renting to you, is called the owner or landlord. Okay. Alright, a lease states the period of time for the rental, the amount of the rent, and the rules that the renters must follow. Some leases contain the following rules. Renters must not have a water bed. Water bed used to be very famous here in the United States, probably in the 90s. A lot of people used to have water beds in, let's say, 80s and 90s. So we don't see a lot of water beds advertised anymore. So if you don't know what they are, they're like beds filled with water, and it used to be more famous than right now. Okay. The thing is that they're filled with water, so there's a danger that they're going to rupture, and you're going to wet all the floor in the apartment. And if you live in the second floor, there's the concern that there's going to cause some damage. Okay. All right. Renters must not have a pet. Renters must not change the locks without the owner's permission. And renters must pay a security deposit. You know, a lot of people sometimes are concerned that the previous occupant of the apartment has the keys. So that means a previous renter could come in, open the door, and steal your things. So some people would rather change the locks. So, okay. Also, the reason also that you want to talk to your owner is because sometimes the owner, when he or she does maintenance to the apartment, such as if there is problems with the heating system and they need to get in, so sometimes they have a main key that they use to open your apartment to go in to access the furnace or the air conditioning. Okay, furnace is what creates the heat in the home. Okay, so for example, I once had an apartment where they had to do some work on the furnace, and the manager opened my apartment when I was not there. I was at work, and the maintenance guy came to fix the air. Okay, now so you have to trust your landlord. You have to also be aware that the lock, maybe the previous occupant has a copy of it. So all these things could come into play. You know, so here it says renter must not change the locks. I mean, there's an expression in English that says it's easier to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. So some people, what they do is they change the locks, and if there is a problem, when the problem arises, they say, I'm sorry. But they know that when they go to work, they know their apartment is closed and is secure even against their own manager. Okay, so it's up to you what you want to do, but know that most apartments, you're not supposed to change the locks without the owner's permission. Okay, now some people, they might change the locks, and when they move out, they put back the old locks again, just to an added measure to protect their things and their home, okay, from people coming in and stealing. Alright. Renter must pay a security deposit. Basically, you pay some extra money in case you make some damage to the apartment. So that means the owner is like securing that if there is some damage, the money will be provided. Okay. Many owners ask the renters to pay a security deposit in case there are damages. When the renters move out, the owners are supposed to return the deposit plus interest if the apartment is in good condition. I never heard about this plus interest, but I guess it might be a new thing, or I don't know. Okay, some places they might not offer interest, okay, especially now that the interest is kind of low right now. But anyway, if there is damage, that the owners can use part of or all the money to repair the damage. However, they may not keep the renters' money for normal wear and tear, which means the normal use of the apartment. Renters do not have to agree to all the terms of the lease. They can ask for changes before they sign. A pet owner, for example, can ask for permission to have a pet by offering to pay a higher security deposit. Okay, so let's move up here. There are laws to protect renters. For example, owners must provide heat during the winter months. In most cities, they must put a smoke detector in each apartment and in the halls. In addition, owners can't refuse to rent a person because of sex, race, religion, nationality, or disability. When the lease is up for renewal, owners can offer the renters a new lease, or they can ask the renters to leave. The owners are supposed to notify the renters, usually at least 30 days in advance, if they want the renters to leave. I just wanted to comment here. These laws must be, it depends on the state that you live. Okay, some states might be different than others, or some cities might be different than others, so you need to become familiar, because I rented before for example, in Colorado, and I had to pay the heat. So I don't understand exactly what they mean here, that the owners will provide the heat during the winter months, because I pay for the heat, okay, and air conditioning. Alright, so this was a reading that had a lot of modals and also ways to express that you need to do something, you have to do something, you must do something. Okay, so there's a lot of things that you have to do and you must do when you're renting an apartment. Okay, so this is a good context for our grammar objective here. Okay, the thing that we're trying to learn. Alright, so 8.2, negatives with modals. To form the negative of a modal, put not after the modal. You can make a negative contraction with some, but not all modals. Okay, so negatives and negative contractions: cannot, can't, could not, couldn't, should not, shouldn't, will not, won't, would not, wouldn't, may not, no contraction, might not, no contraction, must not, mustn't. Okay, I don't hear this often. All the other ones I do hear, but this one I most of the time I say most of the time I hear and say must not. Okay, and also please note that cannot must be written as one word, not two separate words. Okay, interesting. All right, so here are some examples. We cannot pay the rent. You can't have a dog in your apartment. We will not renew our lease. We will not release our lease. We won't stay here. You may not know legal terms. You might not understand the lease. Alright, so now why don't you do exercise number 1. Write the negative form of the underlined words. Use contraction whenever possible. So here is an example. You must pay a security deposit. You mustn't have a water bed. Okay, so fill in the blanks with the appropriate words. Okay, so go ahead and stop the video, and when you're ready to check your answers, just press play again, and we'll continue the video and you'll be able to see the answers. Okay. Alright, here are the answers for exercise number 1, problems 1 through 6. Okay, I'm going to give you a moment for you to check your answers. Then I'm going to read each sentence. Also, you can stop the video right now to check your answers. And when you're ready, I'll turn it on again. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to read these problems for you. I can have a cat in my apartment. I can't have a dog. You should read the lease carefully. You shouldn't sign it without reading it. The landlord must install a smoke detector. You mustn't remove it. You may have visitors in your apartment. You may make a lot of noise and disturb other neighbors. Sorry, this is supposed to be you may not make a lot of noise and disturb your neighbors. Okay? Sorry, there's a mistake here. If you damage something, the landlord can keep part of your security deposit. He can't keep your deposit without proof of damages. Okay, let me just make an observation here, something very interesting, that your landlord cannot keep your deposit without proof of damage. Also, when you first rent your apartment, most of the landlords will give you a form where you go in and you inspect the apartment and you say anything that is wrong with the apartment. So make sure you check your apartment and you make note of anything that looks damaged, because by writing that down, and even if you have a phone taking a picture saying, hey, this happened before I move in, then you making sure that the landlord at the end of your lease, like 6 months later, is not going to come in and says, oh, you made all this damage, and you say, no, this damage was already there. Okay, and here's proof. I signed this paper. I listed the problems right here. Okay, because if you don't do that, the landlord, it is in his or her rights to collect the deposit, because okay, all right, you might get back all your security deposit. If you leave your apartment in bad condition, you might not get all it back. Okay, so please remember, number 4 is a mistake. You may not make a lot of noise and disturb your neighbors. If you do that, the landlord can kick you out, or the police can come over for disturbance. Okay, all right, let's continue to 8.3, and that will be statements with questions with modals. Okay, so here is compare affirmative statements and questions with the modal. So here's affirmative. He can have a cat in his apartment. Can he have a water bed? No, he can't. What can he have in his apartment? In other words, what can he have in his apartment? Who can have a dog? Who can have a dog? Compare negative statements and questions with the modal. He shouldn't pay his rent late. Why shouldn't he pay his rent late? Okay. Please remember that if you want to practice your oral, you can always stop after I say a sentence and try to repeat it. That way, practice your English, both oral and reading, and also the grammar. Okay. Basically, this session is talking about how to make negative statements and also how to make questions. So basically, the modal goes in the front. So you put, it's just like the auxiliary verb, but this time is the modal you put in front of the subject when you make a question. And and if you have a negative, make sure you're doing the negatives just like we did on 8.2, okay, on the previous section. Okay. All right, at this time, what I'd like you to do is exercise number 2. So here's exercise number 2. You're going to read each statement and fill in the blanks to complete the question. So here's an example. You should read this. You should read the lease before you sign it. Why should I read the lease before I sign it? Okay. So go ahead and stop the video and try these problems, and then when you're ready, turn it back on. So stop the video. Okay, welcome back. Here are the answers for problems 1 through 7. If you like to take a look, go ahead and stop the video so you can check your answers, and when you're ready, turn it back on. Okay, I'm going to go through all the answers now. You can't have a water bed. Why can't I have a water bed? Here's missing the I, so let me add that. Why can't I have a water bed? Alright. He must pay a security deposit. how much must, we must pay a security deposit. How much must we pay? Someone must install a smoke detector. Who can install a smoke detector? Number 4, the landlord can't refuse to rent to a person because of race, religion, or nationality. Why can't the landlord refuse to rent to a person for these reasons? Let me read again. The landlord can't refuse to rent to a person because of race, religion, and nationality. Why can't the landlord refuse to rent to a person for these reasons? Number 5. Tenants shouldn't make a lot of noise in their apartments. Why shouldn't they make a lot of noise? Number 6. I may have a cat in my apartment. May I have a dog in my apartment? Number 7. The landlord can have a key in my apartment. The landlord can have a key to my apartment. Can the landlord enter my apartment when I'm not home? Okay, so here again is the question. If the landlord has a key to your apartment, that means he can come into your apartment. So it has to be somebody that you trust. And some people don't trust it, so they change the locks. Now, if the landlord permits that or not is up to you to find out. Okay, but it is a concern, especially if you don't trust your landlord. Okay. Alright, let's continue with 8.4. We're going to talk about must, have to, have got to. The modal must has a very official tone. For non-official situations, we usually use have to or have got to. So, for example, the landlord must give you a smoke detector. The tenant must pay the rent on the first of each month. Okay. The formal obligations, we must. Must is often used in legal contracts such as apartment leases. So that's why we're using must, because it's coming from an official, somebody, the landlord. Okay. So somebody that has the authority to ask for rent. Okay. Alright, the landlord has to give you a smoke detector. The landlord has got to give you a smoke detector. We can also use have to or have got to for obligations. Okay, so here's an obligation that the landlord has, and you can also use must because many times the law requires the landlord to do those such things to give you a smoke detector. Okay? Alright. You must leave the building immediately. It's on fire. You have to leave the building immediately. It's on fire. You have got to leave the building immediately. It's on fire. Must, have to, and have got to express a sense of urgency. All 3 sentences to the left have the same meaning. Have got to is usually contracted. I have got to. I've got to. He has got to. He's got to. Okay? Alright. Our apartment is too small. We have got to. I'm sorry. Our apartment is too small. We have to move. Our apartment is too small. We have got to move. Avoid using must for personal obligations. It sounds very official or urgent and is too strong for most situations. We use have to or have got to. Okay, at the end of the lease last May, I had to move. I had to find a bigger apartment. So I had to find a bigger apartment. Must has no past form. The past of both must and have to is, of both must and have is had to. Have got to has no past form. Okay? Alright. Language note, we don't usually use have got to for questions and negatives. Pronunciation notes, in fast informal speech have to is often pronounced have to. Has to is often pronounced hast. Got to is often pronounced got it. Often have is omitted before got it. Listen to your teacher pronounce these sentences in the above chart. Okay, so so let's repeat again. The landlord must give you a smoke detector. The tenant must pay the rent on the 1st of each month. The landlord has to give you a smoke detector. The landlord has got to give you a smoke detector. You must leave the building immediately. It's on fire. You have to leave the building immediately. It's on fire. You've got to leave the building immediately. It's on fire. Our apartment is too small. We have to move. Our apartment is too small. We've got to move. At the end of the lease last May, I had to move. I had to find a bigger apartment. Okay, I wouldn't worry too much about these notes over here. I usually like to say it the formal way, but please remember that most use is got to. You gotta go home. You gotta do this. Okay, you have to do this. Okay, this is usually when you talk, you might hear people saying that, but it's nothing wrong to say you have to do this. You got to do this. Okay, you have got to do this. Okay, so these are nice to know, but I wouldn't worry too much about them right now. Just worry about these right now. Okay. Okay, this time let's move to exercise number 3. What you're gonna do is you're gonna fill in the blanks with the appropriate verb. Answers may vary. So the landlord must provide heat in the cold weather. Here's an example. So fill in with the appropriate verb. Okay. Alright, take a moment, stop the video, and then restart when you're ready. Okay, welcome back. Here are the answers for exercise number 3. Okay. Remember, you can stop the video if you need more time to check your answers. Let me go ahead and read. You must sign the lease with a pen. A pencil is not acceptable. The landlord must return your security excuse me. The landlord must return your security deposit if you leave your apartment in good condition. The landlord must notify you if he wants to leave at the end. The landlord must notify you if he wants you to leave at the end of your lease. Number 4, you must be quiet in your apartment at night. Neighbors wants to sleep. You must be quiet in your apartment at night. Neighbors want to sleep. Alright, let's go to exercise 4. Exercise 4 says, exercise 4 and 5. These are to make a list of personal obligations you have. I made some examples because I know your examples might be different than what I wrote. So here's more practice for you, okay? I have to help my parents on the weekend. I have to study English every day in order for my English to improve over time. I have to speak English every chance I get. I have to practice saying those words I struggle with by using the freedictionary.com. Okay, make a list of things you had to do last weekend. I had to do my laundry. Number 1, I had to read a book in English last weekend. Number 2, I had to practice my English pronunciation last weekend. Number 3, I had to create a list of words for me to practice their pronunciation this week. Okay, and I hope you notice that these are good example of things that you can do or should be doing right now to improve your English. Okay, exercise 6. Finish this sentence. Practice have got to. Answers will vary. When you live in the US, you've got to learn English. Okay, go ahead and stop the video, answer the questions for exercise number 6, and when you're ready, turn it back on. And here are the answers for exercise 6. Please take a moment to check your answers. Stop the video if necessary, and then let's restart, okay, the video. And here we are. Number 1. When I don't know the meaning of a word, I've got to look up its definition on a dictionary. Number 1. When I don't know the meaning of a word, I have got to look up its definition on a dictionary. Number 2. English is so important in the US. We have got to practice English every day so that little by little we are going to become fluent in the English language. Number 3. For this class, you have got to study and practice every day. Number 4. If you rent an apartment, you have got to pay a deposit in case there is an accident and you damage the apartment. Number 5. If you want to drive a car, you have got to learn the proper way to drive and the rules of safe driving. Alright, let's go on to section 8.5. It's talking about obligation with must or be supposed to. Okay, here's some examples. The landlord to tenants. You must pay your rent on the 1st of each month. Judge to landlord. You have no proof of damage. You must return the security deposit to your tenant. Wording on a lease. The tenant must not change the locks. If you notice here, the person that came first, the landlord to the tenant, the judge to the landlord, is somebody in authority, somebody that has authority towards the second person here. Okay, so it makes official, somebody that has authority. Must has an official, formal tone. A person in a position of authority, like a landlord or a judge, can use must. Legal documents use must. Okay, legal documents like something with authority. Alright, next phrases. You're supposed to put your name on your mailbox. The landlord is supposed to give you a copy of the lease. Avoid using must if you are not in a position of authority. Use be supposed to. Okay, if you're not the landlord, then you can say you're supposed to put your name on your mailbox. Okay, or are you supposed to pay the rent? Okay, because let's suppose you're not the landlord, you're a friend, so you're supposed to. Okay, now with that being said, I oftentimes says, man, we need to you must pay the rent every day. It's like usually you're a friend and you're trying to tell them something that they must do. Okay, so there's a fine line between authority or not, but the book's trying to give you some ideas of that. Okay, so these are the rules, but they're not written in stones. Sometimes you can use must, but according to the book, you should avoid to use must if you're not in a position of authority. Okay, but I had friends that when they give me advice, they say you must pay the rent every day. Pay the rent every month. Okay, you must study for the test tomorrow. Okay, all right. So there is a fine line of difference there. Okay, continuing. We're not supposed to have cats in my building, but my neighbor has one. The landlord was supposed to return my security deposit, but he didn't. I'm supposed to pay my rent on the 1st of the month, but sometimes I forget. Supposed to, not must, is used when reporting on a law or rule that was broken or a task that wasn't completed. Okay? Pronunciation note. The D in supposed to is usually not pronounced. You're supposed to. Okay? So if you notice here, we're not supposed to have cats in my building, but my neighbor has one. The landlord was supposed to return my security deposit, but he didn't. I'm supposed to pay my rent on the 1st of the month, but sometimes I forget. So if you notice, the D is kind of silent. Alright, next one. Exercise 7. Make this sentence less formal by changing from must to be supposed to. Okay. you must wear your seatbelt. You're supposed to wear your seatbelt. Okay, here's a good example where, you know, somebody with authority, like the policeman. Okay, but if you're a friend and you want somebody to die, you know, you might say, hey, you must wear the seatbelt because it's the law. Okay, or if you want to be polite, you're supposed to wear a seatbelt, don't you know? Okay, so things like that. So there's a fine line, but remember, must is more authoritative. Okay, so take a moment to change these phrases to supposed to. Okay, and when you're ready, turn them back on so we can check the answers. Here are the answers. Please take a moment to check your answers, and I'll be reading in a second. Okay, question number 1. You must carry your driver's license with you when you drive. You're supposed to carry your driver's license with you when you drive. You must stop at a red light. You're supposed to stop at a red light. Number 3. We must put money in the parking meter during business hours. We're supposed to put money in the parking meter during business hours. Number 4. Your landlord must notify you if he wants to leave. Your landlord is supposed to notify you if he wants you to leave. Number 5. The landlord must give me a smoke detector. The landlord is supposed to give me a smoke detector. Number 6. The teacher must give a final grade at the end of the semester. The teacher is supposed to give a final grade at the end of the semester. Number 7. We must write 5 compositions in this course. We're supposed to write 5 compositions in this course. Number 8. We must bring our books to class. We're supposed to bring our books to class. Okay, now we're going to go on to exercise 8, where you're going to fill in the blanks. So finish the statements, use the be supposed to plus a verb. Answers may vary. I'm supposed to pay my rent on the 1st of the month. So take a moment, stop the video, and answer these questions. And when you're ready, restart. Okay, here are the answers for exercise number 8, problems 1 through 10. So take a moment to check your answers. When you're ready, restart to listen to the phrases. Alright, number 1. Pets are not permitted in my apartment. I'm not supposed to have a pet. Number 2. The landlord is supposed to provide heat in the winter months. Number 3. The tenants are supposed to clean the apartment before they move out. The landlord is supposed to install a smoke detector in each apartment. Number 5. I was supposed to pay my rent last week, but I forgot. Number 6. My stove isn't working. My landlord is supposed to fix it. Number 7. We're going to move out next week. Our apartment is clean and in good condition. The landlord is supposed to return our security deposit. Number 8. The janitor is supposed to take out the garbage every day. Number 9. The janitor is supposed to clean the hallway twice a week. Number 10. When we move furniture, we're supposed to use the back stairs, not the front stairs. The next exercise, exercise 9, says write 3 sentences to tell what you're supposed to do for this course. You may work with a partner. So basically here I wrote 3 things that were good things that you can do to improve your grade or do well in an English class. Okay, so here's some examples. We're supposed to write 3 compositions this semester. We're supposed to do the assignments. We're supposed to read sentence out loud so the teacher can correct our pronunciation. I forgot the S here. So we're supposed to read sentences out loud so the teacher can correct our pronunciation. We're supposed to continue practicing, studying, and learning English even after the course is over. Okay?